OTB Sports, in association with Guinness, celebrating the return of International Rugby. #Guinness time. Drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Hello and welcome. As we celebrate the return of International Rugby, OTB Sports have teamed up with Guinness to welcome hopefully what will be a great summer of rugby sporting moments with great friends. Today the summer series, the Vodafone Summer Series, kicks off and we are live from the Guinness Storehouse across OTB social channels for pre and post-match analysis of Ireland and Japan. And I'm joined by an amazing panel of guests today. Beside me now is 70 times capped, of course, Devon Toner, second row, Ireland second row. Welcome, Devon.
Thanks very much.
A two-time Six Nations winner, Fiona Hayes. Fiona, welcome to the show.
Valerie, thank you.
And a Munster and Leinster legend, Liam Toland. Liam, welcome.
Thank you very much. This is as close as I've been to a free Guinness bar in my life, and we're not allowed near the bar.
We are delighted to be in the Storehouse today. I mean, just take a look around. The absolute views outside are amazing. Fiona, like Liam just touched on it there, we are in the Storehouse. It's closed today, but it will reopen for the public again on Monday, which is great news.
Yeah, it's brilliant news. It's like things are slowly but surely getting back to normal, and this is just fantastic. I've actually never been up here, and to see the views up here, and like Liam said, to be looking so close to the Guinness but not being able to touch is kind of sad. But look, we'll have a few later, maybe.
Devon, even on your way up, I mean, the downstairs looks absolutely amazing. The Storehouse, what they've done here.
Absolutely, it's an unbelievable place to come visit. I was actually just looking for my gaffer earlier on, but I couldn't see it. It was a pity that the weather's not as good as yesterday. But no, it's an unbelievable asset that Dublin has, to be honest.
Yeah, we are delighted to be here today and to talk about Ireland and Japan. And I suppose the good news about all this and the country reopening is that 3,000 fans will be back in Aviva Stadium today, which is absolutely amazing. Liam, that could mean a lot to the team.
Well, absolutely. And I had the privilege of being in Japan for the World Cup, and it seems like, only around the corner ago, but what has happened to the world in the interim. And just from a Japanese point of view, when I was at the Japanese games, it was just overwhelming, the impact the crowd made. Like you knew you were in a privileged time. You knew it was something special was happening, and I really missed the crowds. And like Aviva has its own version of that, so it's great that 3,000 people are back, and hopefully it'll be 30,000 and it'll keep growing as time goes on.
Fiona, as a coach yourself, would you take it into consideration when you're talking to a team that there'll be fans back in stadium, or would you bother?
Probably not. I mean, they're playing, they're going out there, and you're trying to like tune out and concentrate on the game anyway, but I do think it would be probably mentioned, that what a privilege it is to be playing now in front of people and to be able to put on a show for these people that came up. And I was actually listening to the radio myself on the way up, and there was a lady had rang in and she was saying that she got tickets kind of last minute or in the last week or so, and the excitement, she was just roaring and shouting. She was so happy to be up there, so I'd imagine it's going to be absolutely only 3,000 there, but I'd say they'll definitely be heard there.
One of the things that's probably overlooked is having friends and family back as well, because there's some lads who in the squad, like say Hugo Keenan, who's got like 10 caps, who his family have never seen him play. So it's not just a proud moment for you to put on a green jersey, it's a proud moment for all your friends, your family, to see you get that green jersey. So it's unbelievable for them to be back.
And even I was talking to a few of the top referees, like from a refereeing point of view, like it was really difficult for them to adapt into the no crowd, because the crowd does influence the emotional sense of it, and the way the ebb and flow of the noise, that they had to adapt as well. So Devon's point about families, but referees in the middle, they had a huge learning curve too to adapt to it. So the crowd coming back will kind of satisfy an awful lot of people, hopefully.
Yeah, I was going to touch on Hugo as well. It's an emotional day probably for him. Like you mentioned that he has a couple of caps and they've never seen him play, Fiona, which is crazy in this day and age.
Yeah, it is. It's like, you're there, and I know myself when I got my first cap, my parents, my family, everyone there, it's the first thing you do when you're finished the game. Obviously you're focused on the game, but you're looking around just to see them, proud of you, because obviously they've seen the effort you've put in. And I think it'll be amazing for Gavin Coombs today when he comes on as well and getting his first cap, and hopefully he'll have some family there, I'm sure, all the way up from Skib. I came up from Cork this morning, but some trek, but definitely be delighted to see him. I'd say it's such an achievement for him.
Devon, do you remember your first cap?
Absolutely do. It was in Aviva in 2010 against Samoa, and it was raining, kind of quite like today actually. It wasn't a huge score, but we won in the end, which was great.
And the family were there?
Everyone that was there, yeah. It's people don't understand like how important it is for family as well. As I said already, so like the whole family are there, mum and dad, brothers and sisters, aunties and uncles. Like so, it's huge for any player to do it.
Yeah, 3,000 fans. I know it's not a lot, but hopefully they'll make somewhat of a difference to the Aviva Stadium, which is great. We'll take a look later on at Japan, but now we're maybe going to delve a little bit deeper into Ireland and their last campaign. You know, they had the Six Nations. They had a bit of a slow start, but they had 3 successive wins then. I mean, Liam, what do you think that they should have worked on now between now and the Six Nations and the Summer Series?
Well, I suppose they finished by a huge victory over England, which is always a good way to end it. They're joint third, weren't they, with Scotland, and it could have gone one way or the other in many, many ways, as it does. Tight enough finish against France, etc. So you can definitely see it's a team in transition, and you can see the names. I know the lines is going to distort the team sheet a little bit today because there's so many Irish involved, which is great. But with the new coaching structures, you can definitely see a freeing up of the style in a sense. And the danger with that is that mistakes happen. And you get a sense that under Joe Smith, that he had a very rigid and a very successful game plan, but it required a huge amount of rigidity and low risk, possibly, it might be a different term. But you can see the new management are trying to evolve that game. And you can see mistakes happening and errors happening. But you can see subtle changes in selection as well. Like Hugo Keenan has been mentioned. For me, he's a game changer. Like when I saw him play for Leinster, like his ability to anticipate space and opportunity 2 or 3 passes before it happens is the best in our domestic competition I've seen. He's just phenomenal. So how do you get him on the ball more and more regularly? How do you get him impacting? And then you got like the Stockdale as well, the big unit on the wings. How do you get that? Now we've a huge midfield, like massive, not quite Devon Toner massive, but they're a massive midfield starting today for Ireland. So how can they then contribute? So there's a number of things happening that is unshackled, and Gibson Park at 9 probably is the epitome of that. He looks like a guy who isn't burdened by an Excel spreadsheet of how to play rugby. He just plays. And the players around him seem to be reacting very, very positively. The danger in that is mistakes happen, errors happen, and when those errors happen at the level these guys are playing at, they're punished, and that's probably a reflection of where we are on the table. But there's definitely a subtleness, and Cat's influence is beginning to show as well. So you want to win games, but that justifies the change, and you want to get that balance. And hopefully today, which is a huge test, hopefully that a win with more of a growth towards that little bit of a riskier game, which I think, ironically, Japan have shown in a number of tournaments how they've innovated with skill set and speed, and I think that's where we need to go in a way.
Fiona, I think Liam touched on it there, that the last management, you know, was a bit of a low risk, but do you think there's a bit of a higher risk and they're chancing new things now, and that's important?
Yeah, it is. And I've talked to a lot of people about Mike Catt and the influence that he was bringing, and, you know, a lot of people couldn't see much there. I mean, we knew what Andy Farrell had to offer, but kind of on attack, people were saying I'm not seeing much, but I definitely think towards the end of the Six Nations, the campaign just gone, we start to see a bit more. And I think it was exactly what Liam was saying. It's that kind of trying that pass, trying to get wide, just different. There was a different style there, whereas players spoke before in the past how rigid Joe Schmidt was, and that's the way you had to play if you want to be part of the team. But we can see now there's guys not afraid to try things, throw the ball around, and we're definitely seeing that. And I think that's what people want to see. They want to have a look at a team that's kind of developing, and obviously you want to win games, but as we've seen, the more they've played together, another thing that was a massive influence, Paul O'Connell coming in the line out, we saw it sharpened up straight away in the space of maybe 2 games or 2 weeks of training with them. He just really sorted that out. To me, that's kind of a mindset, and the players seem to bought into the system and what's going on now. And also another big thing for me that I'm really excited today about is Caelan Doris. I mean, there's almost like a changing of the guard at 8. You know, everyone knew what CJ had to offer, big ball carrier, and now you've Coombs and you've got Doris. Obviously can carry the ball hard as well, but I think they have a little bit more to offer, and I'm excited at seeing how Ireland works or how we play around those guys.
Devon, what differences have you seen? What changes have you seen over the last campaign and now?
Obviously the last campaign, there's a lot of ups and downs, but we totally said that the last game against England was the one to look at, and it's one that they will probably have learned a lot from, and I think it's the one thing that they will have to focus on now and have to emulate that in the England game is just the pure physicality. Yeah. They won the ruck time. They literally got 2 men in over the ruck every time, and they got clean ball. So it's literally just focusing on that physicality and the speed of getting the ball out. So like, I know it's said a lot, but it's one up front. Do you know what I mean? So the pack needs to dominate today, like they did against England, I suppose. And that's one thing that we're always trying to do, you know. Like it's not like you go out and try to be dominated by the other team, but like it just happens sometimes. But I think that's one of the things that have to come out today was just physicality, really.
Liam, they have met the previous 8 times, and Ireland have won the 7 of them. Unfortunately for that last one, that I don't know, do we really want to talk about? But you know, that'll stand to them. Maybe, I don't know if they want to look too far back at that game.
Yeah, I think we should talk about it because again, I had the privilege of being at the tournament, and like, for those who haven't been to Japan, I went there because I had to go there, and as soon as I landed there, I was like, why wasn't I here years ago? It's just an extraordinary place, an absolutely extraordinary experience. And once Japan had beaten Ireland, my heart was immediately like, I wanted to see Japan go. And when I left Michael Leach, who's this legend of a player in the back row, like, the impact he had on society over there was just wonderful. I think we can learn an awful lot because they have very obvious deficiencies they've had to kind of negotiate around, and they've been very creative and innovative, but they've prioritised speed and skills. And even against the Lions at the weekend, you could see moments of brilliant skills, brilliancy. And Devon hit it there. Why did Ireland beat England? Because the speed of the ruck, the force of the ball, the skill set, and I think we can learn a lot from what Japan are doing. And if we were coaching under 12s, I'd love to coach the way Japan play, because it's absolutely amazing. So yes, we should keep an eye on it. But a point on Caelan Doris, and Hugo Keenan, the difference they are is monumental. Keenan scored a try against Italy, which was a length of the field try, but it was Caelan. There was a turnover, and Caelan Doris was at 8. His instinct was to go to space, offload, and the ball stayed alive. If that was another back rower, they might have taken contact. It would have gone into a box kick, and then the box kicker landed, and then it would have been a slow progress out of the 22. Those subtleties have to be encouraged by the coaches, but the players also have to the skill set, and you can see those subtleties happening. And the reward against a lesser side like Italy was a try in the far corner in a matter of seconds. So we can learn hugely from Japan, and we can build on. Ultimately, rugby is about dominating the opposition. It doesn't matter what game plan you play. You know.
I think you can learn from Japan as well, and what they do incredibly well is just getting the basic skills right. They don't drop a lot of balls. They don't do a lot of knock-ons. They win their line out. They have solid scrum. So they literally just get all the basic things right. And it's one of the things that kind of we focus on going into the games, that if you just get your basic skills right. One of the things that East and the Sea used to say to us day in, day out, literally, just get your basic skills right and everything will fall into place. So I think that's one thing we can learn from them as well.
And definitely in that first half against the Lions with Japan, they had a lot of errors that we hadn't seen before with them. But when they came out in the second half, it was like a different team, and it was exactly like Devon said. They just got their basics right. Everything was going to hand, and it just looked like a different team than we'd seen in the first half. And I think we're going to see that again here today, because they're going to push on from that game as well.
Andy Farrell mentioned during the week that the team had only been together 12 days in total come match day, and will you think that'll have an effect on the players, Liam?
Of course it does. It absolutely has. And like, again, I keep going back to the Japan experience, but like Jamie Joseph, one of the things he achieved with Japan, himself and Tony Brown, was he kind of under the radar gobbled up all his potential World Cup players and put them into Sunwolves' second side, and he just said, right, be damned to everything, we're just going to work. And the difference time gave him to hone those skills was enormous. So 12 days is a very, very short time, particularly in such a high physical intensity game. Like, you have to have sufficient, like the days of doing double pitch sessions, I'm sure is long since gone. Like, how much, like on a test week, how much actual pitch time do you
Yeah, no, I think they've changed it actually since I've come out. I think they train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and with Thursday off, and then captains on Friday, play on Saturday. But I think so Monday would be very light. So the only Tuesday and Wednesday would be the tough days.
Yeah.
They only have obviously one pitch session a day, so it's not an awful lot of time during the week now to get stuff done. And I think especially because there's so many uncapped players in the squad now, and all the, like, we didn't know what the team was going to be or who was going to get selected. So I think it's something to work on.
Fiona, you're a coach. That was something that would worry you heading into the game. You're like, okay, I've only had 12 days. These players, has it enough time to deal with everything you need to deal with, and the players to gel?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the gelling is the big thing. And as Evan said, you've new players coming in, and there's, like, I remember when we played, you'd be the same. There was a time when you would have played with the same players, and that's a kind of, there would have been like a frame of maybe a year, 2 years where the same players were still around, and that's when things really happened on a pitch. So when you're starting from kind of a scratch, and I know nowadays in international rugby people are in, people are out, but it's that gelling, and as a coach, 12 days you've got to cover everything. They're obviously sent out, lists of what to do or what the lineups are going to be, or etc., or scrummaging things. But some people learn different as well. So you're going in and you need to be physically, you need to see things and how they're done. So 12 days isn't a lot, but they're all playing Munster, Leinster, Ulster, Connacht, so they would know that they're in their prime and they're ready to go. So it should be, it'll be a good game, but definitely that 12 days we'll see a bit of rustiness, I think, at the start.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, Devin, that you play still, and would this be something that would you struggle with going in? Would you okay, I've only have been with these lads 12 days, will this person do that right? Will he do his job? Would you just worry about yourself?
No, not usually.
You can't answer that honestly.
You need to.
It's hard to say. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of obviously Leinster guys will know the Leinster guys, and you generally know everyone else in the other provinces anyway from playing against them, from talking to them after games and stuff. So usually everyone knows everyone in Ireland basically, and as always. No, it's not something that I would have focused on, because after the first couple of days, because you usually have a pretty intense first couple of days in camp, and after that kind of first couple of intense days you kind of have gelled a bit more, and you're kind of focusing on lineouts, and once in training, once your lineouts are clicking, once your scrums are clicking, once balls going to hand, once you're kind of training well, you get a good sense of it. So I wouldn't have been too fussed about it now.
Okay. Liam, do you think they'll be up to speed?
Well, I think one of the things I would have noticed in the last number of games, the emotional well-being, and they seemed happy.
Yeah.
And although and you go, how do you judge? Like, how do you mark that out of 10? But they just seemed happy, and there was something different. There was a fresh approach, which you kind of say, wow, this is great, and you want the team to win when there's that fresh approach and the players are happy. So it's again a project that has to get the consistency. Like Joe Smith has just done. What he's achieved in Irish rugby has just been extraordinary. So this is a whole new regime in many senses. So you're hopeful that with the short day, and the sun is coming out now, which is I think will be helpful for the game in general anyway. But I think you're going to you desperately want them to stay happy and to broaden the game, but to win. And I think there's a huge challenge today. Like they're playing against a side, I think 12 of them were involved in that game you referred to earlier on. Ireland had about 6 or 7 involved. So it's a huge challenge. And I wonder emotionally, is it one that they want to get one up on or not? I don't know how, it's so far ago, maybe it isn't that for the players. I don't know, Devin, would you think that would they carry that?
Yeah.
No, I don't think they will, because a lot of them weren't involved. I think it's a completely new team. There's a lot of opportunities for a lot of young players. I think it's a huge opportunity for a lot of them to just put their hand up. A couple of lads have been kind of in and out of camp, a couple of caps, and I think it's their time to shine really. I think the centre pairs of McCluskey and Farrell obviously have got a big point to prove. I think they've been knocking on the door for a long time now. I think Jacob back in the wing, he's raring to go. And I think Ulton Delan in the second row, he's obviously been knocking around as well. So there was some lanky fella in the second row who was there for a couple of years. But no, Ulton's a phenomenal player, and I'm looking forward to seeing him with James and Pete, and how the lineup goes as well. So there's a lot of interesting combinations that we're looking forward to seeing.
We'll talk about those combinations just a little bit. But Fiona, there's a lot of excitement around the team. I think people are really excited to see how they perform today.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's you always as a supporter, you always want to see the team winning, but it's when you see new young guys coming in, and I suppose the big thing for me is seeing guys being rewarded. So we know, like Gavin Coombs, for example, that I spoke about, has been playing with Munster. We know, even though Caelan Doris was in, he got concussed, but he came back with Leinster, he's in form again. So Joey or Carberry, we'll probably talk about him again, but like, I mean, he came back with Munster, he's settling down, he had his time, you know, back from a big injury, and I think there's excitement about it, but it's definitely that whole kind of thing of seeing guys coming in that you know are playing good rugby, getting their spot, really deserving it, and there's times and there's teams where you could probably play out of your skin, but it wouldn't matter. Like, say if Alton was brilliant and Big Dev was around, he probably wouldn't got anywhere near it, because no, but you know, there's the established players, and coaches like to stick with established players as well, but it's like we're seeing something new here now, and guys are coming in and mixing it up, and it's exciting.
We'll talk to the team. I suppose James Ryan, first of all, getting the captain's armband today. There was a bit of drama during the week about his injury, but he seems to be fine and recovered fairly quickly.
It's interesting because we're talking about James Ryan now in the context of a Lions test starter, potentially a Lions captain, which was very much a fair assessment of where he was. And he struggled for the last season or so, maybe to get into the, as Ireland have struggled, he has struggled a bit. Like, he had an unbelievable opening season, which, you know, Ireland were playing well and he was playing phenomenally well as well. So it's interesting that in our green tinted glasses and blue tinted glasses, how Gatland has kind of gone against the kind of the thinking. And if you sit down the coal light today, you'd say this guy James Ryan is a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal player, but he has now reached to a point in his early in his career where he's to kind of redevelop and redefine himself again. Now, is he going to do that to the tune of a Warren Gatland, or is he going to do that to the tune of his own coaches? And obviously he's going to satisfy his own coaches, but it'll be interesting to see how he evolves his game, because it seems that he wasn't selected for the Lions because of the short nature of the tour and the massive physicality of the tour, and it would appear that he was being judged that he wasn't going to dominate the way he Toje would or whatever else. That's just my guesstimate. So it'll be very interesting to see how often does he get on the ball, what style of play, is he going to start offloading, is he going to start dominating physically, but he's a wonderful, wonderful player, and I'm delighted that he's playing, and I'm delighted he's captain. And we saw with Alwyn Jones how close these top players are to getting that call, you know. So it's another great opportunity for him.
Well, a strong team was named, Fiona. I think that he's chosen the best players at his disposal, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's a few guys in the mix on the bench that will be exciting to see come on, but I definitely think it's a very strong team, and especially Peter O'Mahony will have that leadership in the back row, and you know, as that we spoke about the centre partnership. I mean, that's really exciting. We haven't had those two guys, I don't think, have played together yet, as far as I know, and they both offer so much, you know, really strong, very skillful ball carriers, and a lot of people in Ulster would always argue that McCluskey should be there. You know, they're big fans on him. He's such an impact on Ulster rugby, but it's looking at him now in this game with Henshaw, obviously with the Lions, and I think they will pair really well together. And it's a good, strong team. But for me, I think what I'm really looking forward to seeing as well is the front row and scrums. Killer getting at it. I've been waiting to see him in starting Irish green jersey. You know, I love seeing him out there, and I think he'll bring that big physical ball carrying, and Beelum as well will be excellent. And obviously Keller has had his time away with the Lions, so he's going to be edging to go when he comes back.
It's interesting how you mentioned the scrum, because that moment in that game against Japan, the World Cup, that scrum, which was like, it was an enormous moment in the whole tournament when Japan turned Ireland over at the scrum, and it changed. Like, I can't remember, it's the 34th minute or something, but it changed in that moment. Like, and for those who bemoan the scrum, it is an unbelievable part of our game, and it can have that type of an impact. So I agree with you. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Irish scrum does, and there definitely is going to, whatever would grudge over Japan, because that scrum is definitely going to be conscious of it.
Devin, what do you make of McCluskey and Farrell together?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. One thing that wouldn't be wary of, but I hope that the ball does still get to the wings when needed. I think when Larmer gets his hand on the ball, when Hugo and Jacob get their hand on the ball, I think there's going to be a lot of space. But you need that physicality in the middle as well. I think Shu's going to be crashing up a lot, and Farrell as well. So I just hope we just get to the wings as well. One thing we touched on Hugo as well, like one of the things that he does phenomenally well is his work behind the ball. Like, he's always working. If you just player cam him for a little bit and just see how much he sprints into position every time, he's always making himself that extra man. So hoping he's going to get on the ball now, and I wouldn't put it past, because one thing that Jemison does really well as well, he's phenomenal support lines. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see maybe Jacobs doing a break up the wing and back inside to Gem will score a try, hopefully.
Yeah, because part of the evolution of the game is we've a very exciting footballing 10 in Joey Carberry. Then the next question is, modern rugby now seems to be because you're facing a 13-man defensive line. What's probably going to happen is they're going to try and open as much of the blind side as Ireland can today, to have maybe 3 or 4 Japanese defenders to make it more difficult for them to defend. So you want to have options both sides, and if they're struggling to defend, they can't blitz as readily with lesser numbers. Who's that second pivot going to be? Is it going to be McCluskey? Is it going to be Hugo Keenan? So it's going to be really interesting to see, is it all going to be on Joey Carberry's shoulders? Because there isn't a natural second pivot there in McCluskey maybe and Chris Farrell in that sense. So it's going to be interesting to see who pops up, because it would be a terrible shame, not to echo Devon, not to utilise the back three. This is as exciting a back three as we've ever picked for Ireland. It's wonderful strike, wonderful athletes, and serious pace. You get dizzy looking at them when they're carrying the ball. It'd be really, getting those guys in the ball would be very, very helpful. And if we don't, it would be an opportunity lost.
Fiona, let's talk about Joey Carberry. I mean, a long road to recovery. It's 2 years since he was last, and nearly 2 years since he was last in Ireland jersey. It's a big day for him.
Yeah, massive day. I mean, he was heavily talked about as well, and players know that. You know when your name's being talked about. I suppose you're looking at the media, and I mean, he was such a good player. He came down to Munster. He wanted to start. He wanted to be the starting 10, and everyone thought, passing of the guard, it's going to be going over to. And he got that really bad injury, and it just seemed to be dragged out. And then he thought he was coming back, and then it was pushed out another few months. That's really, really got to hit you hard as a player when you know you could see other 10s then coming up. I suppose is another thing you can see up in Leinster, Burns coming through as well, the 2 lads, and you're looking on injured and just wanting to get in that pitch. But I think Munster have managed him really well. He's come back in, he's played, he might have started out, I think he played 44 minutes his first start, so they've really, really looked after him, and just I think it's worked, and he's gradually, his game is building, and he's such a playmaker, and he's really exciting to watch as a 10. And it's something, I suppose, that obviously Johnny brings massive things to the game, and he's been rested, and he still probably is the best 10 in Ireland. But I think it's good to have Joey there. He's a different style, and I think we'll see. He obviously hasn't played with Gibson Park before, but I think we'll see some slick moves, and that's what we want. We want to look at that as and obviously big ball carries in the centre as well. But I think he'll go out there back, and Carberry will get it out to that wings. He'll be definitely that playmaker in that system.
Devon, with an injury like that, and for him to have such a long road, I mean, you want serious mental strength for you to go, I want to get back in that squad. How difficult is it when you have an injury like that, wondering, will you ever get back there?
Thankfully, I don't know. I've never had to be out that long, but I'm sure he's fed up with people talking about it, day in, day out. Is he going to be back, whatever. So I'm sure he's delighted to be back, and he's delighted, and I'm sure he's going to want to put in a really good performance. But yeah, I think the mental resilience he has has really come through, and I think you kind of need that as a 10 these days to be that resilient. And I hope he has a class game now. Yeah.
Liam, is there a lot of pressure on him heading into this game?
Huge pressure. First of all, his own pressure. The story that's just been outlined by the two, and then who's going to share the burden?
Yeah.
And that's good. As the game evolves, I'll be like, okay, who's actually going to step up and give him a break to allow him to kind of tactically get more awareness? Who's going to attack that blind side, allow him to go? But one thing you see when he came back, and a little like Chris Farrell, to be fair, when he plays with Munster, when Chris Farrell plays well for Munster typically win and play well. Certain players have that ability. Like we saw Devon, when he dominates the line-out, the impact that would have had on the teams he was playing with. Carberry is just the same. The players around him react very differently to him when he's at 10 than when any other 10 for Munster is playing. In other words, the minute he gets the ball, there's a heightened expectation from all the support players around him. Say, this guy's going to do something, right? So I need to keep up with him, because he may throw a ball that I'm not expecting and it'll bounce off my head and I look like an idiot, because that's the skill set he has. And he can ride, like, for a guy who's relatively small physically, how he's not like absolutely binned in hits. He just seems to have the ability just to avoid these monster hits coming into him. Doesn't he?
He has incredible footwork. He always has.
But
In Leinster, he would sidestep you in a phone book. Like,
you've got a 13-man defensive line running up, all ready to tear him apart, and he just seems to avoid those hits. But what the impact is his teammates are all expecting an offload or expecting a half break, and they have to hunt, and that's a huge, like, that torrents through the side, and it's a real energy boost. So yes, there's a lot of pressure on him, I'm sure, because of his injuries. Who's going to share the burden? But his players will be looking and say, wow, we've got a game winner here, and that's a pressure on him as well.
And I suppose a lot of people don't really talk about his kicking game a lot. You talk about him as a playmaker, but his percentages have been quite high, and you spoke, like, he's a small guy, but when he just seems to he has really good focus, and when he's kicking well, he's absolutely outstanding as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing, are they going to go for threes to win the game? Are we going to go down the line, or what kind of style they want to play? But he's definitely capable of obviously both.
Devin, you touched on it a while ago about the uncapped players and them getting a chance to put their hand up. I think there's 13 of the 37-man squad that actually are uncapped. It's a big opportunity for these players. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think obviously it's just Gav today that's the uncapped one, isn't it, today? So I think next week will be huge in team selection there. But I think it's always been the Lions window that has been a huge opportunity to cap players. I think it was 4 years ago where we actually went to a tour of Japan, and that was where Porter, James Ryan, Stockdale, that's where all they got their first caps. So it's a really good opportunity for lads, obviously, and Andy Farrell to see the lads and put their hands up. Yeah, no, it's huge for them.
Let's talk about Japan for a bit, Liam. We did mention that Ireland had 12 days together in training, but Japan have had 12 weeks. Is there some difference there?
There is, and as I was suggesting earlier, like, Japan have done a lot of very innovative, and it starts with Jamie Joseph, the coach, and Tony Brown. Those two guys have been together through Otago, New Zealand, and with the change in the guard, the New Zealand management at the end of the World Cup, they were sounded out to put their name into the hat. And after a bit of thought, they decided not to, because essentially they were saying, no, our loyalty is, well, we value loyalty for a start, and our loyalty is to this Project Japan, the Blossoms, whatever you want to call it. And that's a hugely significant commitment from two really, really top-class guys in that project. And the preparation, as I was saying, leading into the World Cup, it was bananas. They took all their top players out, put them into the Sunwolves B side, and they just trained. The results was their best performance in the Rugby World Cup in their history. And there's an awful lot of players still. There's some big guys who've retired. Fukuoka, the Dr. Fukuoka, who scored the try against Ireland he's 28 now, so he was 26 or 27 at the time. So they have lost a number of players. They're rebuilding in certain positions too, but they've an awful lot more starting today than Ireland had from that fact. So I would expect, I think the referee is a bit harsh on them against the Lions last weekend, so I'd expect it's a really stiff, meaningful challenge for Ireland today. Really stiff. And I think that will focus Ireland hugely, and for the preparation time and many other reasons.
Yeah, Fiona, we did see a glimpse of them last weekend, but before that it was the World Cup quarter-final, and 2019 was their last game out. That's a crazy amount of time for no game time, really.
Yeah, and it is. And trying to build up to that test rugby, you can train, you can play, and you can train for 12 weeks together. But actually, when you play test rugby, that's when you see. And I suppose Ireland have had the Six Nations, similar lads playing together. Even some of the guys mightn't have been on the squads for the Six Nations, but I'm sure they were up at camps and stuff like that. So they've definitely had more time together. I mean, as I spoke of earlier, we saw Japan, they did get better throughout the game, and I do expect them to start really well this week compared to against the Lions. I think they were a bit kind of sketchy, but it's feeling each other out at that level as well. I mean, I often tell people about my first cap, and you're all talk, oh yeah, I am going out here and delighted with myself, and I'd say I was on about 4 minutes and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I hadn't actually played that high intensity. Obviously Munster, Leinster games, they're big inter-pro games for us as well, but it's a different level. Like there's no get up. People would be like delighted in the back rows, would be delighted when it was scrum time, and I would be nearly crying because I know I'd have to get out straight away. But I mean, it's just they haven't had that intensity. So I do think Ireland are a bit of an advantage in having played those games together. But I do think we will see a good Japanese squad out there team as well.
Did they impress you in the World Cup, David?
Absolutely. I think they impressed everybody, didn't they? Yeah, no, I think we touched on it before. It's just their skill set, their speed, their desire, their physicality, everything about them is likeable. They're a really good rugby team, and I think it's a huge test today. As Fiona said, though, I think the fitness is a huge thing as well. I think game fitness is nothing beats having games on your belt, and I think a lot of the Ireland guys have been playing really tough games, and coming up to the end of the season, it's been the end of a very, very long season for a lot of lads. But hoping it produces a good game.
What will the Japanese players, kind of traits will they bring to the game today, Liam?
Enormous, I know it's a cliche, but an enormous passion and loyalty and to the whole project. It's like, again, going back to Japan when I was there, it's like when you're actually there, you can put your hand on it, you can almost touch it. It's insane what it means to them. Yeah. And it's not a natural game to them in many senses, as a sport, sumo wrestling and all the other, their traditional sports and that sort of stuff. They have managed to kind of blend a number of kind of little like our project in many ways, and they've brought in some really significant, like Leach, for example, New Zealander, Matsushima at full back, Japanese mother, Zimbabwean father, born in South Africa, has come in. So they've managed to blend in some real quality that wouldn't be household names to us watching, and then they have a skill set and a speed with which they play the game. Now, we are aware that you can split the pitch in all sorts of formations. You can put forwards, 1-3-3-1. There's a million varieties of that. So they have their version of it. But at the core is a speed and an ability to execute skills and make decisions at a speed that I think Irish players sometimes aren't doing at the Irish level, if that makes sense. And I think that's the alarmingly different piece between what we're doing and what they're doing. They can operate at a speed that is just wonderful to watch, and they keep the ball playing, and they got players running amazing lines, and like the Hugo Keenan stuff, but they demand that their version of Hugo Keenan is involved way more often than we are traditionally in the Six Nations and that kind of stuff.
Will Ireland have learned anything from that game back in the World Cup, or is it too far back, Fiona, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose even it takes you a while to look at videos. I'm sure they went home after the World Cup and probably didn't want to review things straight away, but I'm sure the players eventually look back to it. I think it is a bit far back. They will obviously look at their style and you'll see the systems that they play, but that would change even though they haven't played. I've seen Tony Brown with the Highlanders and Joseph, they're probably two of the best coaches I've seen that bring an influence to a team straight away. You can see what they're doing, and especially with Japan. So I'm sure they've looked at Japan. They look at the Lions game and look at what they've done last week. But I'm not sure. I'd say some of the lads might be still carrying a bit of the hurt from that World Cup, because it was a shock to everyone watching. No one I ever talked to thought Japan was going to beat Ireland. But we saw a team out there that wanted to play for each other with passion and skill set. And I think that's exactly. Nakamura in the centre. They just have this, exactly like you were saying, they just have this ability under pressure to be able to move that ball really quick. So I think Ireland would probably look at that as well, and I've seen that, and bring probably a bigger line speed than they would have in the past as well.
But with all of that, we can't under or overemphasize the fact that our Six Nations dominates everything we do, and it's such a different competition than the Rugby World Cup, and that there's a subtle, Japan have allowed themselves, they've kind of taken themselves out of that pressure cooker to prepare for the World Cup, and the result is as we saw. But I don't know, do we have still got the same ability to kind of, we have to respect enormously the Six Nations and all that comes with it, and I think that does influence our game plan as well. Is there unfinished business, do you think, Devon?
Yeah, well, I think as I've said, people want to put their hand up, and they obviously don't want to lose. I think one of the foundations of winning any test match is the set piece, and I think that's going to be huge today. I think Japan probably wouldn't be as tall as Ireland, so I think I'm going to look forward to seeing James Ryan, Peter O'Mahony, Ultan Dillane just get up in the air and try and disrupt the ball. I think obviously, as I said, Paul O'Connor's come in. He's kind of revolutionised what we're doing there in defensive setups, and looking forward to seeing the scrum as well. So I think if we can top them there and we win that battle, we'll go to a long way towards winning.
Liam, what can we expect from Ireland today? Everyone's very excited about it.
It's a little bit of an unknown, to be honest.
Okay.
I think like the victory against England was very helpful. It's very, very helpful. But I've a sense that Kat wants to probably push on again to another place of attack. But you know, the cliches, Devon articulated it perfectly there. You got to dominate your set piece. Ultimately, you got to win the game, and you got to impose your game plan on them. It doesn't really matter what it is. What I'd like to see is as exciting a back three as we have, with the back row, which has quite a bit of mobility in it, and a good bench to come on as well. I'd like to see a kind of a further loosening of the shackles, in a sense, with a win, which would be fantastic.
One of the things we haven't touched on is how dynamic the ball carriers in the pack actually are. You've got Killer in the front row. Ultan is a really good ball carrier. You've got Josh van der Fleer who runs as quick as he can into contact all the time. Like, so there's a lot of dynamic ball carriers in that pack as well, and that's just going to lead to quick ball from Gemma at the back. So I think that's going to be huge.
We might as well move on to prediction time. We're nearly getting towards the end and moving more towards the game time. Liam, for you, how do you think you can see the game going, and who do you think is going to win?
Normally when there's a live audience, you test who are there, but we don't have a live audience, so we can't go Japan and win the league, or we can't go Kilkenny or something. I fell in love with Japanese rugby, having had, as I said, the privilege of being over there, and I just adore everything about them. It's just phenomenal, and I'd love to see them win, but clearly win when they're not playing against Ireland. And I really hope that just the simplicity, the smile in the Irish faces during the Six Nations, like there was a burden lifted and there's a whole new regime. I really hope that they win, absolutely. And the basic stuff wants to go right, but I'd love to see a swashbuckling performance. And let's not over-egg it a bit. You know, a hint of a swashbuckling performance from that back three would be wonderful in winning.
Great. When you were in Japan, did you get to see a good bit of it? You seem to have fallen really in love. I'm like, what happened in Japan to say that there's so much going
He just took off his kimono.
I feel like you were going to...
No, I know. I was at many of the games, which was absolutely fantastic, absolutely wonderful.
Great. Yeah. Fiona, we're moving on to you. I suppose it's prediction time. How would you see the game going? And
I think it's going to be a tight enough game, but I do think that it's set piece that will dominate, and obviously, like we spoke as well, be a couple of tries run in from the back three as well. So I think Ireland would probably maybe win by maybe 10 points. I would imagine.
Great.
I always go with my heart, you know. I always go close to home. Even Munster, Leinster, everyone's like Leinster. I'm like, I can't say it. I have to say Munster are going to win. But I definitely do think Ireland will win today.
Good.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to go to Ireland as well. I think it's going to be tight. First half, first 50-60 minutes, I think we're going to probably build the scores, take the threes early on, and kind of build the scores as much as we can, and then hopefully we'll pull away in the second half, maybe 30-15 maybe, or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe.
Can you see them being a bit rusty at the start?
Oh, absolutely. And if I was looking at what we need to really observe is how is 12 and 13 for Ireland doing? You know, how are they performing? Are they because they can easily be massive battering. Like these guys are huge. They're huge men, like. And are they going to be massive battering rams? And are they going to be able to flick a switch and go to a more fluid passing game? So that, like all the other bits, that's the piece I'm going to look at. How are 12 and 13 for Ireland playing, and what kind of a structure are Ireland trying to put into place to expose the Japanese defence? And what's 12 and 13's role in that?
Great. Well, I hope your predictions are right, because we're back here at 3 afterwards, guys. So we're here today to celebrate the return of International Rugby. OTB Sports have teamed up with Guinness to welcome what will hopefully be a summer of lovely sporting rugby moments spent with good friends. As the Vodafone Summer Series kicks off today, we are live from the Guinness Storehouse on OTB social media channels to chat about pre- and post-match analysis. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back right after the game. So do join us.
OTB Sports, in association with Guinness, celebrating the return of International Rugby. #Guinness Time. Drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.